The scent of Ethan's cologne lingered on the silk scarf I found tucked between the seats of his car. It wasn't mine. My heart raced as I clutched the damning evidence, my world tilting on its axis. "Catalina? What are you doing out here?" Ethan's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway of our modest bungalow, silhouetted against the warm light spilling from inside. I quickly shoved the scarf into my pocket, plastering on a smile. "Just grabbing my phone charger, honey. Thought I left it in the car." Ethan's brow furrowed. "In this weather? It's freezing out here." I shrugged, trying to keep my voice steady. "You know me, always forgetful." As I brushed past him into the house, the scent of his cologne mingled with something else. Perfume, perhaps? My stomach churned. Ethan called from the living room. "Don't forget, we've got that industry party tomorrow night. It's important for my career." I gritted my teeth. Another night of playing the doting wife while Ethan schmoozed with producers and directors. Of course, dear, I wouldn't miss it. The phone rang, shattering the tense silence. I answered, grateful for the distraction. "Catalina? It's Aunt Madeline." "Aunt Maddie? How are you?" "I'm fine, dear, but I'm worried about you. Are you sure everything's all right with Ethan?" I glanced towards the living room, lowering my voice. "Everything's fine, Aunt Maddie. Why do you ask?" She sighed. "Call it a hunch. You know I've never quite trusted that man. And after what happened with your cousin Riley—" "Ethan isn't like that," I snapped, more harshly than I intended. "He loves me." "If you say so, dear. Just be careful, all right?" After hanging up, I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Aunt Madeline's words echoed in my head, mingling with the memory of that silk scarf. Who was that? Ethan appeared in the hallway, startling me again. "Just Aunt Madeline," I replied, forcing a smile. "Checking in." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "She still doesn't approve of me, does she?" I shook my head. "She's just protective. You know how family can be." He snorted. "Yeah, well, maybe if they saw how hard I'm working to provide for us, they'd change their tune." The words stung. I'd given up my own theater career to support Ethan's acting dreams. Now, with his star finally rising, it felt like he was slipping away. "Speaking of work," Ethan continued, "I've got an early meeting tomorrow. I'm heading to bed." As he turned away, I blurted out, "Ethan, wait, we need to talk." He paused, looking annoyed. "Can't it wait? I'm tired." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I found something in your car." His expression changed, a flicker of panic crossing his face before settling into practiced nonchalance. "Oh, what's that?" I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the silky fabric. This was it, the moment of truth. But as I looked at Ethan, his handsome face etched with fatigue and stress, I faltered. It's nothing," I mumbled, withdrawing my empty hand. "Just some old scripts. I'll sort through them tomorrow." Ethan's shoulders relaxed visibly. "Great. Good night, Cat." As he disappeared upstairs, I sank onto the couch, the scarf burning a hole in my pocket. What was I doing? Why couldn't I confront him? The truth was, I was scared of losing everything I'd sacrificed for, scared of admitting that maybe, just maybe, Aunt Madeline and the rest of my family had been right all along. But as I sat there in the darkened living room, a new emotion began to simmer beneath the fear and doubt. Anger. How dare he betray me like this? How dare he take advantage of my love and support? I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over Aunt Madeline's number. No, I couldn't call her. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed a plan. Tomorrow night's party suddenly took on a new significance. If Ethan thought he could play me for a fool, he was in for a rude awakening. It was time to take control of my own story. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my dress for the industry party. The silk scarf I'd found in Ethan's car lay on the dresser, a constant reminder of my suspicions. As I applied my lipstick, memories of our early days flooded back. "Cat, you ready?" Ethan called from downstairs. "We can't be late." "Coming," I replied, grabbing my clutch and heading down. Ethan whistled appreciatively. "You look stunning, babe." For a moment, I saw the man I fell in love with, charming, attentive, full of dreams. But the illusion shattered as he checked his phone, frowning. "Everything okay?" I asked. He nodded distractedly. "Just some last-minute script changes. Let's go." The party was in full swing when we arrived. Ethan immediately dove into the crowd, leaving me alone at the bar. I ordered a glass of wine, watching him work the room. "Well, if it isn't Catalina Morgan," a familiar voice said behind me. I turned to see Philip, my old theater colleague. "Phil, what are you doing here?" He grinned. I'm producing now. Heard about a hot new actor named Ethan Morgan and had to check him out. Didn't realize he was your husband. I forced a smile. Small world, huh? Philip's eyes narrowed. You okay, Kat? You seem... off. Before I could respond, Ethan appeared, slipping an arm around my waist. There you are, darling. Oh, hello, I'm Ethan Morgan. Philip Reeves, Phil replied, shaking Ethan's hand. I was just catching up with Kat here. We used to work together in theater. Ethan's grip on my waist tightened. Is that so? Kat never mentioned you. The tension was palpable. I cleared my throat. Phil was just telling me about his producing work. Right, Phil said, his gaze flicking between us. Actually, Ethan, I'd love to chat about a project I'm developing. Got a minute? As they walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I mingled half-heartedly, keeping an eye on Ethan and Phil. Their conversation seemed intense, with lots of gesturing and hushed tones. An hour later, Ethan found me again, his eyes bright with excitement. Kat, you won't believe this. Philip's offered me the lead in his new film. My stomach dropped. That's great, honey. When does it start? We begin pre-production next month. It's a 6-month shoot in Vancouver. 6 months. The room started to spin. Kat, you okay? Ethan's voice sounded distant. I nodded weakly. Just need some air. I stumbled onto the balcony, gulping in the cool night air. This couldn't be happening. Just as I was starting to suspect Ethan's infidelity, he lands a role that'll take him away for months. Catalina. It was Philip. It was Phil. What's going on? I turned to him, tears threatening to spill. Nothing. Everything's fine. He sighed. Come on, Kat. I know you better than that. Is it the role? Because if you're not comfortable with Ethan taking it. No, I interrupted. It's not that. It's just... I hesitated, then made a decision. Phil, can I trust you? His expression softened. Of course. Taking a deep breath, I told him everything. My suspicions, the scarf, the late nights, and secretive phone calls. As I spoke, Phil's face grew increasingly concerned. Kat, I'm so sorry, he said when I finished. But listen, maybe this film is a good thing. It'll give you some space to figure things out. I nodded, wiping my eyes. You're right. Thanks, Phil. As we headed back inside, I spotted Ethan deep in conversation with a stunning redhead. Their body language was unmistakable. Heads close together, her hand on his arm, his eyes locked on hers. Fury rose in my chest. How dare he? Here, in public, where anyone could see. Phil followed my gaze. Oh, that's Amanda. She's playing opposite Ethan in the film. In that moment, everything crystallized. I knew what I had to do. Phil, I said, my voice steady. I think I'd like to come to Vancouver, after all, as your assistant. His eyebrows shot up. Are you sure? I nodded, my eyes never leaving Ethan and Amanda. Absolutely. It's time I got back into the business. As we rejoined the party, a plan began to form in my mind. Ethan thought he could have it all. The career, the adoring wife, and his little affairs on the side. Well, he was in for a rude awakening. Vancouver wouldn't know what hit it. Vancouver's skyline glittered outside my hotel window, a far cry from our modest bungalow back home. I'd been here for 2 weeks, watching Ethan's star rise with each passing day, and with it his ego. Kat, have you seen my lucky cufflinks? Ethan's voice echoed from the bathroom. I sighed, fishing them out of my purse. Here, he emerged, looking dashing in his tuxedo. Thanks, babe. You're not dressed yet? The premiere starts in an hour. I'm not feeling well, I lied. You go ahead without me. Ethan's brow furrowed. You sure? It's a big night for me. I know. Break a leg. As soon as the door closed behind him, I sprang into action. I'd been biding my time gathering intel. Tonight was the night I'd start putting my plan into motion. I dialed Phil's number. He's gone. You ready? On my way, Phil replied. 15 minutes later, we were huddled over my laptop in the hotel room. You sure about this, Kat? Phil asked, concern etched on his face. I nodded grimly. He needs to be exposed, Phil, for what he's done to me, to our marriage. We spent the next hour combing through Ethan's emails and text messages. What we found made my blood run cold. Look at this, Phil pointed to an email chain. He's been planning to leave you for months. Says here he's waiting for the right moment to maximize publicity. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them away. Keep looking. As we dug deeper, a pattern emerged. Ethan had been systematically using people to climb the Hollywood ladder. Old friends, fellow actors, even his own family, all pawns in his game. Kat, Phil's voice was soft. There's something else you should see. He pulled up a series of messages between Ethan and Amanda, his co-star. My heart sank as I read their intimate exchanges. Plans for secret rendezvous, promises of a future together. "I'm so sorry," Phil said, squeezing my hand. I pulled away, anger replacing hurt. "Don't be. This is exactly what I needed." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Where are you? Press is asking about you." I smirked, an idea forming. "Phil, how fast can you get me to that premiere?" 30 minutes later, I strode down the red carpet, cameras flashing. Ethan's jaw dropped when he saw me. "Kat, what are you doing here? I thought you were sick." I plastered on my best smile for the cameras. "And miss your big night?" "Never." As we posed for photos, I whispered in his ear, "We need to talk. Now." We ducked into a quiet corner, away from prying eyes. "What's going on?" Ethan hissed. I met his gaze steadily. "I know everything, Ethan. The affairs, the manipulation, your plans to leave me for publicity." The color drained from his face. "Kat, I can explain." "Save it," I cut him off. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to end things with Amanda, quietly. You're going to finish this film, and then we're going home to sort out our divorce. On my terms." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "And if I don't?" I smiled coldly. "Then I go public with everything I've found, every sordid detail. How do you think that'll play for your rising star?" For a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Ethan, vulnerable, uncertain, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "You wouldn't dare," he snarled. "Try me." We stared each other down, the sounds of the premiere fading into the background. This was it, the point of no return. Ethan finally broke the silence. "Fine, you win, for now." As he stormed off, I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. I'd done it. I'd stood up to him, but this was just the beginning. Phil appeared at my side. "You okay?" I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders. "I will be. Come on, we've got a show to put on." As we rejoined the party, I caught sight of Amanda across the room. Our eyes met, and I saw a flicker of guilt cross her face. Good. Let her squirm. The game was on, and I was playing to win. The Vancouver shoot was wrapping up, and with it, my patience. Ethan's transformation was complete. He'd become a stranger, consumed by his own hype and Hollywood's glitter. I stood in our hotel suite, packing up the last of our belongings. Ethan burst in, his face flushed with excitement. "Kat, you won't believe this. I've been offered the lead in a major studio film. It's huge." I forced a smile. "That's great, honey. When does it start?" "That's the thing," he said, avoiding my gaze. "It's a 3-picture deal. We'd have to move to LA permanently." The room spun. "What about our home? Our life back in?" "Come on, Kat," Ethan interrupted. "This is my big break. Our big break. Don't you want that for us?" I bit back a retort. "Us?" There hadn't been an us for months. "I need some air," I muttered, grabbing my coat. Vancouver's streets were a blur as I walked, my mind racing. How had we come to this? The modest dreams we once shared seemed like a lifetime ago. My phone buzzed. A text from Phil. "Emergency at the studio. Need you here ASAP." Grateful for the distraction, I hurried to the production office. Phil was pacing, looking agitated. "What's wrong?" I asked. He handed me a tablet. "Look at this." It was an entertainment news site. The headline made my blood run cold. "Rising star Ethan Morgan's secret double life exposed." The article detailed Ethan's affairs, including Amanda, complete with incriminating photos and text messages. My hands shook as I scrolled through it. "Kat, I swear I didn't leak this," Phil said, his voice urgent. I believed him. But if he didn't, who did? As if on cue, my phone rang. "Ethan, have you seen it?" he demanded without preamble. "I'm looking at it now," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "This is a disaster," he groaned. "My agent's going crazy. The studio's threatening to pull the deal." A cold clarity washed over me. "What do you want me to do, Ethan?" There was a pause. "We need to present a united front, show them we're rock solid. Can you do a joint interview with me? Deny everything?" The audacity of his request stunned me into silence. "Kat, are you there? This is important. My career is on the line here." His career. Of course, that's all that mattered to him now. "I'll think about it," I said, finally ending the call. Phil watched me warily. "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath. "I don't know yet, but I'm done being a pawn in his game." Back at the hotel, Ethan was frantic. "There you are. We need to get our story straight before the press conference." "No," I said quietly. He froze. "What?" I said, "No, Ethan. I won't lie for you." His face darkened. "After everything I've done for us, this is how you repay me?" I laughed bitterly. "Everything you've done for us? You mean cheating on me? planning to leave me for publicity? Ethan paled. How did you? It doesn't matter, I cut him off. What matters is I'm done. I won't be your prop anymore. He grabbed my arm. You can't do this to me, I'll be ruined. I yanked free. You did this to yourself. As I turned to leave, Ethan's voice stopped me. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. I met his gaze, seeing the stranger he'd become. In that moment, I made my decision. Goodbye, Ethan. I walked out, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I was reclaiming my life, my identity. As I stepped into the cool Vancouver night, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the news. Time to tell your side of the story? Madeline Shaw, Lifestyle Magazine. I stared at the message, a plan forming in my mind. Maybe it was time to pick up that pen again, after all. I sat across from Madeline Shaw in a quiet cafe, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. The veteran journalist studied me with keen eyes, her recorder placed between us. Are you sure you want to do this, Catalina? She asked, her voice gentle but probing. I took a deep breath. I'm sure. It's time the truth came out. As I began to speak, the words flowed like a dam breaking. I told her everything. The early days of love and sacrifice, the gradual erosion of our relationship, and finally the betrayal that shattered it all. Madeline listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions. When I finished, she leaned back, a look of admiration on her face. You're incredibly brave, you know that? I shrugged, feeling drained but oddly liberated. I'm just tired of living a lie. As we wrapped up the interview, my phone buzzed. A text from Phil. Ethan's looking for you, says it's urgent. I sighed, thanking Madeline and heading back to the hotel. Ethan was pacing in our suite, his face a mask of fury. Where the hell have you been? He demanded. Out, I replied coolly. What's so urgent? He thrust his phone at me. On the screen was an email from his agent. My stomach dropped as I read it. They're canceling the deal, Ethan said, his voice trembling with rage. All because of those damn rumors. We need to fix this, Cat. Now. I handed the phone back, my resolve hardening. No, Ethan, we don't. His eyes widened in disbelief. What are you talking about? I'm done covering for you, I said, my voice steady. In fact, I just gave an interview to Madeline Shaw. The whole truth is coming out. The color drained from Ethan's face. You what? You heard me, I replied, standing my ground. No more lies, no more manipulation. It's over. Ethan's shock quickly morphed into anger. He grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. You can't do this to me. I'll ruin you. Cat, I swear I will. I yanked my arm free, adrenaline coursing through me. Go ahead and try. I'm not afraid of you anymore. As I turned to leave, Ethan's voice stopped me cold. What about Amanda? Did you tell them about the baby? I froze, my hand on the doorknob. What baby? Ethan's laugh was cruel. Oh, you didn't know? Amanda's pregnant. Guess I forgot to mention that little detail. The room spun. I steadied myself against the wall, fighting waves of nausea. A baby. Ethan and Amanda were having a baby. Cat? Phil's voice cut through the haze. He stood in the doorway, concern etched on his face. Everything okay? I brushed past him, needing to escape. The hotel corridors blurred as I ran, finally bursting out onto the street. The cool night air hit my face, bringing me back to reality. My phone buzzed. Madeline. Article's ready for review. You sure about this? I stared at the message, my mind reeling. The truth was out there now, waiting to be shared with the world. But at what cost? A child, an innocent life, would be caught in the crossfire. As I stood there, torn between vengeance and compassion, a memory surfaced. Aunt Madeline's voice, wise and gentle. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show mercy, even to those who don't deserve it. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the phone. This was it, the point of no return. Whatever I decided now would shape not just my future, but the lives of everyone involved. The city lights blurred as tears filled my eyes. I blinked them away, steeling myself for what came next. It was time to make a choice, one that I could live with, no matter the consequences. With trembling fingers, I typed my response to Madeline, sealing my fate and the fate of those around me. I stared at my phone, my finger hovering over the send button. The message to Madeline was simple. Hold the story. We need to talk. Just then, a knock at the door startled me. It was Phil, his face etched with concern. Cat, what's going on? I saw Ethan storming out of the hotel. I took a deep breath. Phil, I need your help. Things are about to get complicated. As I filled him in on the latest developments, including Amanda's pregnancy, Phil's expression shifted from shock to determination. What do you want to do? He asked. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. With trembling hands, I answered. Kat, we need to talk. Ethan's voice was unnervingly calm. Meet me at the studio in an hour. Alone. I agreed, ending the call with a sense of foreboding. Phil grabbed my arm. You can't go alone. It's not safe. I shook my head. I have to do this, Phil, but I need you to do something for me. An hour later, I walked into the deserted studio. Ethan stood in the center of the soundstage, bathed in a single spotlight. I'm glad you came, he said, his voice echoing in the empty space. What do you want, Ethan? He stepped closer, his eyes glinting. I want a divorce, Kat, on my terms. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd seen it coming, the reality was devastating. Your terms? I managed to choke out. Ethan's smile was cold. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement. You'll tell the press our split is amicable, and you'll walk away with nothing. Anger flared within me. And why would I agree to that? He pulled out his phone, playing a recording. My blood ran cold as I heard my own voice, detailing Ethan's affairs to Madeline Shaw. If this gets out, my career is over, Ethan said. But so is yours. No one in this industry will ever trust you again. I felt the walls closing in. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, was hanging by a thread. You have until tomorrow to decide, Ethan continued. Choose wisely, Kat. As he turned to leave, something inside me snapped. Years of suppressed anger and resentment bubbled to the surface. No, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Ethan paused. What did you say? I said no, Ethan. I won't be bullied into silence. Not anymore. He laughed, but I detected a note of uncertainty. You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare. I pulled out my own phone, hitting play on a recording I'd made earlier. Ethan's voice filled the studio, admitting to his affairs and manipulation. His face paled. How did you? I learned from the best, I replied, a grim smile on my face. You're not the only one who can play games, Ethan. For a moment, I saw fear in his eyes. Then his expression hardened. You'll regret this, Kat. I'll make sure of it. As he stormed out, my phone buzzed. A text from Phil. It's done. Check your email. With shaking hands, I opened my inbox. There it was, a contract from a major streaming service offering to turn my story into a limited series. Tears stung my eyes as the reality sank in. This was it, my chance to reclaim my voice, my story. But as the adrenaline faded, doubt crept in. Was I ready for the world to know everything? Could I handle the scrutiny, the judgment? My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Aunt Madeline. Remember who you are, Kat, her message read. Your story deserves to be told. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was mine to choose. With renewed determination, I dialed Madeline Shaw's number. It was time to tell my story, on my terms. As the phone rang, I steeled myself for what was to come. The real battle was just beginning. The studio lights were blinding as I sat across from Madeline Shaw, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. We're live in 3, 2, 1. The producer's voice faded as the red light blinked on. Madeline smiled warmly. Welcome, Catalina. Thank you for joining us today. I took a deep breath. Thank you for having me, Madeline. Your story has captivated the nation. She began. A Hollywood fairy tale turned nightmare. Can you tell us what really happened? As I began to speak, the words flowed easier than I expected. I recounted the early days with Ethan, the sacrifices I'd made, and the gradual erosion of our relationship. And then, I said, my voice steady, I found evidence of his affairs. Madeline leaned in. How did you react? At first I was devastated, I admitted, but then I got angry, and that anger turned into determination. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, focusing on the interview. You mentioned a turning point, Madeline prompted. Can you elaborate? I nodded, steeling myself. It was when I discovered Ethan's plan to divorce me for publicity. He wanted to use our breakup to boost his career. The studio fell silent. Even Madeline looked shocked. That's quite an accusation, she said carefully. Do you have proof? This was the moment I'd been dreading and preparing for. I pulled out my phone, playing the recording of Ethan's admission. As his voice filled the studio, I saw the crew exchanging glances. Madeline's eyes widened. Catalina, she said softly, This is extraordinary. Are you prepared for the consequences of sharing this? Before I could answer, the studio door burst open. Ethan stormed in, his face contorted with rage. "Cut the cameras!" he shouted. "This interview is over." The studio erupted into chaos. Security guards rushed in, but Ethan pushed past them, reaching for my phone. "You can't do this, Kat," he hissed. "Think about Amanda, the baby." I stood my ground, my voice surprisingly calm. "I have thought about them, Ethan. That's why I'm doing this. The truth needs to come out." He lunged for me, but Phil appeared out of nowhere, restraining him. "It's over, Ethan," Phil said firmly. "Let her speak." As security dragged Ethan away, his shouts echoing through the studio, I turned back to a stunned Madeline. "I'm so sorry," I began, but she held up a hand. "No apologies necessary," she said, a glint of admiration in her eyes. "This is the most riveting television I've seen in years." The producer approached, looking nervous. "We're still live. What do you want to do?" Madeline looked at me questioningly. This was my chance to back out, to keep some semblance of privacy. But as I looked around the studio, at Phil's encouraging nod, at the crew's expectant faces, at Madeline's steady gaze, I knew what I had to do. "Keep rolling," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. As I settled back into my seat, Madeline leaned forward. "Catalina, you've just experienced a shocking interruption. Are you okay to continue?" I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yes, I am, because this isn't just about me and Ethan anymore. It's about every woman who's been silenced, manipulated, or made to feel less than she is." Madeline's eyes sparkled. "Then by all means, continue. The floor is yours." As I began to speak again, pouring out the full story without holding back, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Years of pent-up emotions, of swallowed words and stifled dreams came rushing out. But with each revelation, each painful truth laid bare, I felt stronger. This was my story, my voice, and no one could take that away from me. As the interview drew to a close, Madeline asked one final question. "Catalina, what's next for you?" I smiled, feeling a surge of hope for the first time in years. "I'm not sure," I admitted, "but I know it'll be on my terms, and that's a start." As the cameras stopped rolling, I realized this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. My beginning. The aftermath of the interview was a whirlwind. My phone wouldn't stop ringing, my inbox overflowed, and paparazzi camped outside my hotel. But amidst the chaos, I felt an unfamiliar sense of peace. A week after the broadcast, I sat in a sleek office overlooking Los Angeles, facing a panel of executives from the streaming service. "We want to greenlight your series, Catalina," the head producer said, sliding a contract across the table. "Your story has resonated with millions. We believe it could be groundbreaking." I stared at the document, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for the pen. This was it, my chance to tell my story, on my terms. As I signed, a commotion erupted outside. Ethan's voice, loud and angry, carried through the door. "You can't do this," he shouted. "That's my life story, too." The door burst open, and there he stood, disheveled and desperate. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I once loved. "Ethan," I said calmly, "it's over." He deflated, sinking into a chair. "Kat, please. My career is ruined. Amanda left me. I have nothing." The room fell silent, all eyes on me. This was the moment of truth, the climax of our tumultuous journey. I took a deep breath. "You're right, Ethan. You do have nothing. But that's not because of me. It's because of your choices." He looked up, his eyes pleading. "Can't we work something out, for old time's sake?" I shook my head, feeling a surge of strength. "No, Ethan. I'm done compromising myself for you. This is my story now. I'm going to tell it." As security escorted him out, I turned back to the executives. "I'm sorry about that. Where were we?" The head producer smiled. "I think we just witnessed the perfect ending to your first season." Laughter filled the room, breaking the tension. As we discussed the details of the show, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. This wasn't just a career opportunity. It was a chance at redemption, at reclaiming my voice. Months flew by in a blur of writing sessions, casting calls, and production meetings. Before I knew it, I was standing on set, watching actors bring my story to life. On the night of the premiere, I stood backstage, heart pounding. The theater was packed with industry bigwigs, critics, and fans who had followed my journey. As the lights dimmed and the first scene played, I felt a hand slip into mine. It was Phil. "You did it, Kat," he whispered. "You took control of your narrative." Tears welled in my eyes as I watched my story unfold on the big screen. The pain, the betrayal, the struggle, but also the strength, the resilience, the triumph. When the credits rolled, the audience erupted into applause. As I stepped onto the stage for the Q&A, I was met with a standing ovation. Looking out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some new, I felt a surge of gratitude. For Aunt Madeline's unwavering support, for Phil's steadfast friendship, for every person who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. As I fielded questions about the show and my journey, one reporter asked, "Catalina, what would you say to other women who feel trapped in toxic relationships?" I paused, considering my words carefully. I would say this: your story matters, your voice matters, and it's never too late to reclaim your narrative. The room fell silent, hanging on my every word. I spent years dimming my light for someone else, I continued, but the moment I decided to shine, everything changed. So to every woman out there wondering if she's strong enough, brave enough, worthy enough, the answer is yes. Always yes. As the applause washed over me, I felt a profound sense of peace. This wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning. My beginning. Later that night, as I stood on my hotel balcony overlooking the city, I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. "Aunt Madeline, it's Kat. I did it. I really did it." Her warm laughter filled the line. "I never doubted you for a second, my dear. Now, tell me everything." As I recounted the evening's events, I realized that this moment of connection, of sharing, of being truly seen and heard, this was what it was all about. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every woman who had ever felt silenced, every person who had ever doubted their worth. And as I looked out at the twinkling lights of Los Angeles, I knew that the best chapters of my life were still to come. How could I have been so blind all these years? The words echoed in my mind as I stared blankly at the floral centerpiece on our table, reeling from the conversation I'd just overheard in the restroom hallway. This was supposed to be a celebration, a special birthday dinner for Eli at his favorite bistro. He was finally turning 18, my only son about to embark on the journey to adulthood. I had sacrificed so much to get to this point, to provide him the best I could as a single mother, while my husband Grant pursued his high-flying real estate career. Our marriage had been turbulent, to put it mildly. Grant was never home, always chasing the next big deal while I worked long hours as a high school counselor to keep us afloat. But Eli was the light of my life. As long as I had him close, I endured all the heartaches and disappointments. Tonight, however, the wool had been lifted from my eyes. On his way back from the restroom, Grant's hushed phone conversation had shattered my world. "Baby, just a few more months before the child support ends, then it's just you and me in paradise." He had crooned lovingly, oblivious to my presence just around the corner. I froze, bile rising in my throat. Grant was talking to his mistress, making plans to abandon us once he no longer had any legal obligations. Burning fury coursed through me as I returned to our table. How long had he been cheating while I sacrificed everything for our family? All the times I had forgiven his neglect, blaming the demands of his work. The vacations and parent-teacher conferences I attended alone, the nights waiting anxiously for him to come home. It was all a sham, a lie I told myself to keep going. Grant slipped back into his seat, eyes glued to his cell phone as he typed furiously, a small smile playing on his lips. The truth sat like a rock in my stomach while Eli chatted excitedly about his college applications. My eyes landed on the gift I had carefully selected for Grant, a limited edition Hublot watch I had saved up for months to buy. Suddenly, I wanted to hurl it in his lying, cheating face. This man who had vowed to love and cherish me. How could he destroy our family so callously? I took a deep breath, slowly moving the gift out of sight. Now was not the time. But soon, I promised myself he would face the truth. I would make sure he paid the price for his betrayal. The waiter arrived with our entrees, interrupting my raging thoughts. I slowly cut into my grilled salmon, chewing mechanically without tasting it. Grant was oblivious, prattling on about his upcoming deals between gulps of wine. Under the table, I slipped my phone out and composed a quick text to Marcus, an old family friend who also happened to be one of the sharpest divorce attorneys in town. "Urgent, need discreet meeting." I hit send, hand trembling slightly. The die was cast. I could no longer avoid this. but I would be strategic, speak to Marcus first before confronting Grant. Above all, I needed to shield Eli. My sweet boy did not deserve any of this ugliness and heartbreak. He was innocent, his whole future ahead of him. I had to handle this right. Eli's excited voice shook me from my thoughts. "Mom, Dad, thank you so much for dinner. I can't believe I'm finally 18. He beamed, raising his glass. "To new beginnings ahead. I'm so grateful for your love and support." I managed a weak smile, clinking my glass softly. "To new beginnings." The words nearly choked in my throat. Grant nodded absently, eyes still glued to his phone. Under the table, I slipped the watch box back into my purse decisively. The lavish gift would be better served selling for a good price online. I had a divorce lawyer to pay now. Grant may have betrayed our vows without a second thought, but he would not escape so easily. I would fight for Eli, for myself, for all the years I had sacrificed holding this family together. The next chapter of my life was just beginning. The heavy wooden door creaked open, snapping me back to the present. I was sitting in Marcus's office, a tastefully decorated space that oozed success and prestige. He ushered me inside gently. "Lorraine, please have a seat. Tell me what's going on." I sank into the plush leather chair across from his desk, clutching my purse tightly. Where should I even begin? "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Marcus. I don't know who else to turn to right now." My voice quivered despite my best efforts. Marcus nodded, his bespectacled eyes radiating warmth and wisdom. "Take your time. What can I do to help?" I took a deep breath. "It's Grant. I just found out he's been having an affair and plans to leave us as soon as Eli turns 18. Marcus's eyebrows shot up, but he stayed silent, waiting for me to continue. "You've known us for years. You know what I've sacrificed for this family, working double shifts to cover bills when Grant's business was just starting out, handling everything at home by myself, finances, repairs, parenting. I've given everything I have." Anger and hurt welled up inside me. I thought back to all the times I'd swallowed my pain and frustration to keep the peace. The vacations and holidays I'd spent alone with Eli while Grant was tied up at work. How many signs had I missed or willfully ignored? Marcus handed me a box of tissues, his eyes brimming with compassion. I dabbed at my eyes hastily. Now was not the time for tears. I needed to be strong and strategic. I overheard him talking to his mistress last night. He promised her a new life together as soon as he's free of his obligations. All these years, and that's all Eli and I are to him, burdens to discard. I clutched my purse tighter, feeling the small birthday gift I'd never had the chance to give Grant. That watch would fetch a good price toward my legal fees. Grant owed me that much and more. Marcus scribbled some notes, glancing at his monitor. "I see. And have you spoken to Grant directly about this?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I wanted to consult you first. See what my options are, especially finances and custody for Eli." At 18, Eli was legally an adult, but he still had a semester of high school before graduation. I needed to protect him, give him stability and care until he was fully on his own 2 feet. Marcus nodded sagely, steepling his fingers under his chin. "You're being wise. Why don't you tell me more about your current situation? I can provide some recommendations once we have all the details." I spent the next hour laying everything bare, our assets, accounts, debts. Marcus took copious notes, only interrupting occasionally to ask thoughtful questions. In the 20 years I'd known him, his calm demeanor and sharp intellect had never wavered. He inspired confidence and trust. By the time we finished reviewing the paperwork, I felt lighter. Talking it all through had cleared my mind and firmed my resolve. I would not back down quietly or cave to Grant's intimidation. Too much was at stake. Marcus leaned back, removing his glasses. "I know this is difficult, Lorraine, but you have several excellent options, especially given the evidence you have." He outlined a solid game plan to protect myself and Eli financially, while gathering more proof of Grant's misdeeds. Marcus would be discreetly consulting trusted colleagues to build an airtight case. For the first time in days, I felt hope stirring inside me. I had an ally now, someone dependable who could guide me through the turbulent times ahead. Grant may hold the money and resources, but I held the moral high ground. With strategic courage, I could still gain the advantage. The next move was mine. "Mom, he can't get away with this." Eli's voice echoed loudly in the quiet kitchen. I shushed him gently. It was past midnight, and I didn't want to wake the neighbors. "Lower your voice, sweetie. I know you're upset, but we have to be smart about this." I slid a cup of chamomile tea over and motioned for him to sit. We both needed to calm down and think clearly. Eli took a deep breath, clutching the mug tightly. "I just can't believe Dad would do this to us. And that woman, Clara, she knew he was married. They have to pay for what they've done." I nodded wearily. My sweet boy didn't deserve to have his world shattered like this. When I first told him about Grant's affair, he had raged and cried, cursing his father's name. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen Eli express much emotion. He was usually so stoic, immersed in his studies. This betrayal had cut deep. "Revenge won't solve anything right now," I said gently. "We need to be smart and gather evidence against them first." Marcus had advised documenting proof of Grant's long-term affair and reckless spending to gain leverage in the divorce proceedings. Hitting him where it hurt, his reputation and his money, was the smartest play. Eli gripped his mug tighter, eyes blazing. "I can talk to some of Dad's former assistants and colleagues. Maybe they know something that could help." I hesitated. Eli's grades were stellar, and I didn't want him getting distracted or consumed by vengeance, but having an extra set of hands could be useful. "Just be discreet," I finally said. "Don't let it affect your schoolwork. Getting that academic scholarship is what matters most." Eli nodded. "I know, Mom. My grades will stay up, I promise. I just want to help bring Dad to justice." His jaw was set stubbornly. Clearly, I wouldn't be able to talk him out of this crusade. Perhaps it would even be cathartic for Eli to actively contribute to holding Grant accountable. "Okay, but no confrontations, and don't give your father any reason to suspect us." I squeezed his hand gently. "Now get some rest. You have exams next week." Eli hugged me tightly before shuffling off to bed, still mumbling curses at his father. I stayed up late finalizing my divorce filing papers and financial disclosures. Grant's sweet little mistress, Clara, was in for a rude awakening when she realized the price of her new life. Served her right for helping destroy my family and my trust. Over the next few weeks, Eli and I fell into an easy routine gathering evidence separately while maintaining normalcy on the surface. To the outside world, we were still one big, happy family. Meanwhile, Eli worked his charm getting incriminating details from Grant's friends, staff, and colleagues. My boy had his father's gift for persuasion, albeit with better motives. Slowly but surely, our documentation grew. Between Marcus's legal preparations and Eli's social sleuthing, everything was falling into place. My confrontational dinner with Grant was just a week away. Once Eli graduated, I could serve Grant the divorce papers along with a healthy dose of karmic payback. The anticipation made my heart race. For today, though, I had to set those thoughts aside. Eli's high school graduation ceremony was about to start. As he crossed the stage to accept his diploma, tall and handsome in his robe and mortarboard, I felt my heart swell with pride. Against all odds, my boy had made it. His life was just beginning, full of promise and possibility, and I would fight with my last breath to protect the future he deserved. I stared at the folder in front of me, anxiety and anticipation swirling in my gut. It contained the culmination of weeks of careful planning and evidence gathering, everything needed to confront Grant and destroy his twisted lies once and for all. It had been a long road getting here. The sleepless nights spent digging through old financial records and emails, looking for any shred of proof. Eli working his charm to get the truth from Grant's colleagues. My endless strategy sessions with Marcus to build an airtight case. We were as ready as we could be. And yet, my hands trembled as I held the sealed manila folder. Was I doing the right thing? Eli and I had built a stable life together despite Grant's neglect. Did I really need to demolish what remained of our family unit? Perhaps I should just take the high road. Let karma take care of Grant and his midlife crisis fling, while I focused on my future with Eli. I could tell Grant that I knew about his affair, but minimize the confrontation. Amicably dissolve our marriage without all this ugliness. Salvage some faint echo of the happy family we once were. I shook my head sharply, dispelling those weak thoughts. No more blind forgiveness and second chances for Grant. He had thrown away any goodwill I once felt when he betrayed our sacred vows, lied to my face every day while plotting his escape with that gold-digging secretary Clara, Grant deserved to be brought low after profiting from my years of sacrifice. This was about justice, not just revenge. Exposing his misdeeds was the only path to closure for me and especially Eli. My son had enough turmoil to process already without carrying this bitter secret forever. The truth would set us free. Our future peace and healing depended on total honesty and accountability. However difficult this dinner confrontation might be, I owed it to both of us to see it through. Eli popped his head into my study, thick dark hair disheveled as always. "Mom, I'm headed out to meet some friends for pizza. Need anything before I go?" I smiled, warmth filling my chest. "No, sweetie, you go have fun. Stay safe and call me if you need a ride back." He nodded, eyes drifting to the hefty folder on my desk. I knew he shared my turbulent mix of anticipation and fear. But Eli had proven himself wise and discerning beyond his years. He understood what was at stake, what needed to be done. "It'll be okay, Mom. No matter what happens, we're in this together." He hugged me quickly, gangly frame enveloping me. I clutched him tightly, trying to convey my gratitude and love through that embrace. Then he was gone, loping stairs taking two at a time. Tomorrow we would host Grant and Clara at a supposed celebration dinner, where I would finally serve Grant the harsh reality he deserved. A pit started forming in my stomach. It was almost time to face the music. I squared my shoulders and closed the folder. Right or wrong, the die was cast. All the weeks of painstaking preparation couldn't eliminate the risks we faced, but the time for hesitation and second thoughts was over. Whatever happened at tomorrow's confrontation, I had to be strong and see this through. For Eli, for myself, and for the life we could build as soon as Grant's poisonous secrets were laid bare. Tonight was the night. After endless planning and preparation, the confrontation I'd alternately longed for and dreaded had finally arrived. In just a few hours, Grant would arrive with his pampered mistress Clara, expecting a pleasant birthday celebration dinner. Oh, it would be memorable, all right, but for far different reasons than Grant anticipated. I smoothed my black dress and examined myself critically in the mirror. I had selected an outfit that portrayed strength and confidence. No more playing the meek, forgiving wife. Those days were done. Tonight, Grant would see the formidable woman he had unleashed through his callous betrayals. The doorbell rang, and I steeled myself before going to answer. It was Marcus, precisely on time. I welcomed him in to join Eli and I for a quick strategy session before the fateful confrontation. "Good evening, Lorraine. How are you holding up?" Marcus asked kindly, eyeing me with concern. He knew this would be an emotional trial. I shrugged, aiming for nonchalance. Ready to finally serve Grant the harsh truth he deserves. In reality, my nerves were stretched taut as piano wire, but showing weakness or hesitation now would undermine everything we'd worked for. Marcus nodded. "Remember, you have all the power tonight. The facts are on your side." He patted the file folder thick with evidence I had prepared to confront Grant with. "We'll all be right here with you. Stay focused on your goal, exposing Grant's lies so you and Eli can move forward." Eli emerged from the kitchen, wearing a sharp button-down shirt and slacks. He had insisted on being present tonight, despite my offers to spare him this painful spectacle. "I need to see this through," he had said gravely. My boy had grown up so fast this past month. Once again, I felt that pang of maternal pride and anguish. The doorbell rang again. No more time for doubts or second thoughts. Taking a deep breath, I strode to the foyer and threw open the door with more force than necessary. Showtime. Grant stood on the porch next to a tall, impeccably dressed blonde. Ah, the elusive Clara in the flesh. She was certainly beautiful, but looked rather bland and vapid. I managed a tight smile. "Grant, Clara, so nice of you to come. Please make yourselves comfortable." My voice dripped honey, belying the maelstrom within. Grant breezed in casually, Clara clinging to his arm. "Wouldn't miss Eli's celebration dinner. Where is the man of the hour, anyway?" Right on cue, Eli appeared from the kitchen, face schooled into a mask of grim calm. We all took seats around the finely set dining table. Expensive china and crystal wine glasses glinted in the low light, the perfect backdrop for the bombshells about to be dropped. Marcus nodded discreetly, signaling that he had activated the hidden recording devices we had planted earlier. We needed every detail documented. I smiled tightly. "So glad we're all together tonight for this special family occasion." Grant grinned while Clara fidgeted. I want to propose a toast. I raised my wine glass. To new beginnings. We all took sips. Now for the true theatrics to begin. There is something I need to discuss with you first, though, Grant. I kept my tone civil and calm, still playing the role. Grant looked confused, while Eli and Marcus's eyes were steely calm. They knew what was coming. I pulled out the thick file folder and let it drop onto the table with a resounding smack. New beginnings indeed. For example, your new beginning with Clara here, while our marriage was still very much intact. Grant paled rapidly. What are you talking about? He sputtered. Too late. The trap was sprung. I smiled icily. I think you know very well, but allow me to refresh your memory. I opened the folder slowly, watching Grant and Clara's eyes widen. Let's start with the credit card statements, shall we? I pulled out a stack of papers. Some very interesting hotel charges the past few years while you were working late. Grant sputtered, face rapidly turning red. I can explain. I silenced him with a look. Save it. Unless you can explain 10 pages of charges for jewelry, lingerie, couples massages, must be quite the demanding client. Clara flushed crimson next to Grant, shrinking into her seat. Served her right, the two-faced homewrecker. And that's just the start. I slammed down another stack of papers. Emails to your assistant clear back to 2012, dictating love notes to your dearest Clara? I shook my head in mock sadness. You always were sloppy with covering your digital tracks. How did you? Grant stared at the mounting evidence, eyes bulging. I felt a surge of dark satisfaction at finally puncturing his brazen facade. It doesn't matter how. What matters is you being held fully accountable for destroying this family. My voice remained icy calm, strengthened by the righteous fury coursing through me. I pressed on, spurred by years of pent-up hurt and betrayal. Oh, and let's not forget the offshore accounts. Quite a lot of marital assets diverted without my knowledge. I'm sure the court will have questions. With that, I turned my gaze to Marcus, who had been silently observing. His face was a mask of restrained fury. He rose slowly from his seat. Good evening, Grant, Clara. I'm Marcus Wright, attorney representing Lorraine during these divorce proceedings. Grant's face somehow turned even paler. I drank in his shocked expression, thrilled to finally have gained the upper hand. As you can see, we have compiled extensive evidence of your financial malfeasance and infidelity. Lorraine has a rock-solid case for an extremely favorable divorce settlement and child support. Marcus motioned to the damning array of documents. I suggest you refrain from denying any accusations or attempting to discredit this evidence. We have enough proof to bury you for years in litigation and destroy what remains of your professional reputation. He paused, leaning over the table to look Grant right in the eye. However, if you agree to a quick, amicable settlement, we can avoid airing more of your dirty laundry. I urge you to make the wise choice here. His smoothly delivered ultimatum pierced the heavy silence. Clara was openly sobbing now, mascara smudged across her face. Under different circumstances, I may have pitied her. But tonight, I only felt cold satisfaction seeing her lavish, ill-gotten world crumble. Grant buried his face in shaking hands, the magnitude of his defeat sinking in. I had imagined this moment so many times, certain I would explode in rage or glee. But confronted with the reality, I only felt bone-deep relief. Our painful charade was finally ending. The long road of healing could begin. I rose calmly from my seat, holding Grant's defeated gaze. Your lies end tonight. Sign the settlement, grant us a quick divorce, and this all disappears. You have a choice to make. With that, I turned my back and strode away, my heels clicking decisively on the tile floors. The confrontation was over, my long-awaited justice finally obtained. It was time to start writing a new story. I stood at the kitchen sink, numbly rinsing wine glasses with shaky hands. The confrontation I had planned and agonized over for weeks was finally over. Grant and his tearful mistress had staggered out minutes earlier, shell-shocked and defeated. Marcus stepped up beside me, gently prying the glass and sponge from my clenched fingers. It's done, Lorraine. You were strong and decisive, just as we planned. His kind eyes radiated reassurance. Go rest. I'll finish up here. I managed a weak smile of gratitude before sinking into a kitchen chair, body and mind utterly spent. The adrenaline that had fueled my ruthless composure through the evening was bleeding away, leaving me hollowed out. Eli entered cautiously, kneeling beside my chair. "Mom, are you okay?" His worried face blurred through my exhausted tears. I pulled him into a crushing embrace, clinging to the reassuring solidity of his presence. My boy, my reason for enduring all these trials. It had all been for him. "I'm okay, sweetie. It's just overwhelming." I stroked his hair as he hugged me tighter. Watching his father's shameful secrets brutally exposed couldn't have been easy either, but Eli had insisted on bearing witness tonight, to see justice served for both of us. Once again, his maturity and resilience left me in awe. I dabbed my eyes and sat up straighter. Enough tears. I needed some answers. Marcus re-entered, holding a thick manila envelope. "The settlement agreement is ready for your review, along with the petition for divorce. I'll be filing immediately. It's an extremely favorable outcome." He summarized the terms: 70% of marital assets, full child support for Eli's college, and enforcing Grant's retirement from his company to protect our stakes. It was far beyond what I had hoped for. Marcus had worked magic. I flipped numbly through the pages, emotions still muted with shock. It was all here in ink. Grant's admission of guilt on multiple counts, surrendering everything we had demanded. He had caved entirely, knowing any court battle would be hopeless against our arsenal of evidence. "Thank you, Marcus. This is more than fair." I tried to inject warmth into my numb voice. He had fought brilliantly for us. Marcus gave a satisfied nod, snapping his briefcase closed. "Of course. It's the very least Grant owes you both after all these years. Justice won't restore what he broke, but it can clear a path for your fresh start." I walked him out, still in a daze, with Eli's arm wrapped firmly around my waist. As I watched Marcus's car disappear into the night, an unexpected thought pierced through the fog. It was over. Every sleepless night, every hour spent strategizing and gathering proof, every ache over my demolished marriage, I could release it now. Grant's ruin was assured, and my future finally free of his poisonous web. Tomorrow I could begin rebuilding a joyful life with Eli, unburdened and unashamed. It would take time to truly heal, but we had taken the first bold steps tonight. I turned to Eli, hope flickering tentatively inside me. "Why don't we take that trip to Italy we've always dreamed about? A mother-son graduation celebration." Eli's face lit up, eyes shining. "Really? That would be amazing." I hugged him tightly once more before heading upstairs, the promise of tomorrow's freedom propelling my tired steps. I could rest easy at last, justice served and a new dawn awaiting. The past was finally laid to rest. Warm sunlight filtered through swaying Italian cypress trees as Eli and I strolled down a cobblestoned path, gelato in hand. It had been 2 blissful weeks since we'd arrived in Tuscany for a celebratory graduation trip, courtesy of Grant's newly liquidated assets. Italy was just as beautiful and healing as I'd hoped. Long leisurely days spent exploring quaint hillside towns and tasting delicious local wine and cuisine. Evenings spent laughing with Eli over home-cooked meals on our villa's patio, looking out over rolling vineyards stretching to the horizon. Our confrontation with Grant already felt like a distant memory. Being immersed in the beauty and serenity of Italy made those painful chapters of our life somehow smaller. Petty, even. I sighed contentedly, linking my arm through Eli's as we walked. "How's your pistachio gelato, sweetie?" He grinned. "Amazing, as always. This was the best graduation gift ever, Mom." My heart swelled. "You deserve it, kiddo. I'm so proud of you." Watching Eli relax into his carefree young self again after shouldering so much responsibility and heartache had been the greatest joy. He would return home ready for college, unburdened by his father's toxicity. We arrived back at the villa as the setting sun bathed the terracotta roof tiles in golden light. I curled up on a lounge chair with a glass of Chianti, flipping idly through my discarded novel. For the first time in ages, I actually had time to read something unrelated to financial records or divorce law. Across the patio, Eli was furiously typing on his laptop, brow furrowed in concentration. Probably chatting with that pretty Italian friend he'd met in town earlier this week. Young love in the Tuscan sun, how quickly life moved on. My own heart suddenly felt lighter than it had in years. The isolation and stress that had weighed me down was finally lifting day by day. I was remembering what it felt like to breathe freely, revived by new possibility. A notification from my lawyer back home interrupted my musings. Marcus had sent through the final divorce decree, officially dissolving my tattered marriage. In the attachment, he included a brief update on Grant's downfall. I quickly skimmed through. Grant had submitted his resignation from the company, disappearing quickly and quietly as agreed. His reputation was mud in the industry after rumors of embezzlement and misconduct surfaced. No cushy CEO positions awaited him now. A vindictive part of me hoped he was suffering, consumed by shame and regret over losing his wealth and stature. But an even larger part simply felt indifferent. Grant no longer held any power over me, for better or worse. I stretched out on the lounge chair contentedly. The sun had set, leaving a dusky purple hue over the vineyards. Somewhere nearby, cicadas chorused softly. Eli wandered over and squeezed my shoulder. "Hey, Mom, want to go grab dinner in town tonight? My treat." I smiled, pride and gratitude welling up. "That sounds perfect, honey." Arm in arm, we made our way slowly down the winding path toward town. The past was finally laid to rest, granting me passage to a life reclaimed, and I intended to savor every luminous step ahead with my boy beside me. Justice had been done, and hope's first tender shoots were rising from the ashes at last. Our new story was just beginning.